It was an unexpected moment. Finding myself in my walk-in closet at 3 a.m., tears streaming down my face as I held onto financial documents that had the power to alter my entire life. The Cartier watch Donald had gifted me for our 10th anniversary ticked away on my wrist. Each second a reminder of the deceptions I had endured. 15 years of marriage, and a single thoughtless text message was all it took to fracture the seemingly flawless life I believed I was living. That moment is etched in my mind with excruciating detail. It was an ordinary Sunday afternoon, and Donald had placed his phone on the kitchen counter while he took a shower. A message notification appeared from Brooklyn, my closest friend since college, my maid of honor, and the godmother to our daughter. Last night was truly unforgettable. Your absence is already felt deeply. My hands shook as I reached for the phone. And in that moment, all the late business meetings, weekend conferences, and questionable credit card charges fell into place. Brooklyn stood by my side through it all, my mother's fight against cancer, my challenges with infertility, and the initial phases of launching our business. She had been by my side through 3 miscarriages before we finally welcomed Hazel into our lives. As I examined the series of private messages exchanged between her and my husband, I felt my entire world shatter. Allow me to take a step back for a moment. My name is Catherine Mitchell, but everyone refers to me as Kat. I met Donald when we were both fresh out of college. Upon inheriting my father's faltering real estate development company, I was resolute in my mission to revitalize it. Donald exuded charm, ambition, and appeared to align perfectly with my vision. We tied the knot within a year, and together, we turned my father's modest business into one of the most thriving property development firms in the Northeast. What few people knew was that the company's success was largely due to my inheritance and my business acumen. Donald emerged as the prominent figure of Mitchell Properties. He excelled in client interactions and possessed a confidence that inspired immediate trust in others. I found satisfaction in operating from the background, overseeing the finances, and making the essential choices that propelled our growth. I had always thought we were in this together. The clash took place on a Friday evening. I had dedicated the week to meticulously collecting evidence, consulting with our legal team, and fortifying my emotional resilience. Upon Donald's return, he discovered me in his study, quietly examining the documents. "You're burning the midnight oil," he remarked, loosening his tie. "Fascinating day at work?" I inquired, my tone unwavering even as my heart raced. Was lunch with Brooklyn more captivating? His complexion paled, yet he regained his composure swiftly. That's one aspect of Donald. He had a knack for quick thinking. Feline. "Allow me to clarify. What is the duration?" I cut in, my gaze fixed on the documents before me. "It's not as you might imagine." "How?" "Extended." He let out a deep breath, his fingers brushing through his salt and pepper hair, the very strands that had begun to gray ahead of time, lending him an air of distinction and reliability. 8 months. 8 months have passed. 8 months of family dinners with Brooklyn, her assisting Hazel with science projects, and girls' nights where she listened to me discuss my marriage, all while being fully aware. "I want you to understand," he said, his voice adopting the familiar condescending tone I had come to recognize over the years, "that this isn't merely a casual affair. Brooklyn and I have discovered a deep connection." I finally raised my gaze to meet his, my hands calm as I organized the papers on his desk. "Affection? Indeed, my dear Kat. You need to realize that Brooklyn connects with me in a way you never could. She exudes youthfulness and energy. She encourages my aspirations while allowing me the freedom to pursue them on my own terms. It's time to confront the truth. She surpasses you in every aspect." I experienced a profound shift within, a transformation that left me more resilient than ever. For all this time, I allowed him to claim the accolades that were rightfully mine, permitting him to be the visible figure while I labored diligently in the shadows. I had persuaded myself that this was the preferable path, that the source of recognition was insignificant as long as we triumphed together as a family. "Indeed," I replied gently, rising to my feet. "I must confront the truth." He appeared to breathe a sigh of relief, likely believing I would come to terms with this situation, perhaps even consent to some kind of agreement. Donald had a knack for bending situations to his advantage. "I'm pleased to see your rational approach to this," he remarked, extending his hand toward the crystal decanter of whiskey resting on his desk. "It may seem overwhelming, but every asset of the company is registered under my name. His hand halted in midair, suspended above the decanter. What is happening? The house too, the vacation property in the Hamptons, the apartment in Manhattan, the cars, everything. I retrieved a document and gently pushed it across the desk. You signed this prenup 15 years ago. Remember? Your enthusiasm for joining a prosperous family overshadowed your attention to the details. The expression on his face, a blend of disbelief and emerging dread, might have been amusing if it weren't so heartbreaking. In that instant, I perceived him distinctly for the first time in years, not as the assured, accomplished entrepreneur he feigned to be, but as an individual who had tethered his fate to mine and then deceived me in the most profound manner. He sputtered, "You can't. I am capable, and I shall proceed." I grabbed my purse, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "The deadline for your move is Monday. Your belongings will be carefully packed and dispatched to your chosen destination. It might be a good idea to begin your search for an apartment. I've heard Brooklyn has a charming spot, though it may feel a little snug compared to your usual space." As I approached the door, he shouted, his voice laced with both fury and desperation, "This will come back to haunt you, Kat. I am essential to your needs. The clients have confidence in my abilities. I glanced back one final time. Absolutely not, Donald. The Mitchell name commands trust. I am known as, you simply took it for a brief period." That night, as I found myself in my closet enveloped by the remnants of what I believed to be an ideal existence, came a conclusion. Not defeat me, rather, it would signify my freedom. Once I constructed a vast empire, I can take on the challenge once more, but this time it will be according to my own vision. However, I needed to inform Hazel first. I needed to ensure that my daughter received the truth from me before the rumors began to circulate. And then, I would reveal precisely what Catherine Mitchell could achieve. As I finally settled into bed that night, my phone vibrated with a message. It originated in Brooklyn. "It's time for a conversation." Donald shared all the details with me. Please understand, I switched off my phone without replying. Tomorrow would present its own challenges. But for the moment, I required some respite. Ultimately, managing an empire demands a sharp mind, and I had strategies to devise. Unbeknownst to them, this was merely the prologue to my tale. Informing your 17-year-old daughter that her father has betrayed both you and her godmother is undoubtedly one of the most challenging conversations a mother can face. On Saturday morning, I prepared Hazel's favorite breakfast, eagerly anticipating the moment. Blueberry pancakes drizzled with authentic maple syrup, reminiscent of the comforting meals my mother prepared during challenging times. The kitchen filled with the familiar scent of comfort food as Hazel wandered in. Her dark hair messily tied up in a bun, still in her oversized sleep shirt. She glanced at the pancakes and froze. "Mom, you only whip these up when there's trouble brewing." What transpired? Where is father? I motioned for her to take a seat, my heart racing. "We should have a conversation. Darling, is it regarding the altercation I overheard last night?" She settled into her seat, her green eyes, reminiscent of her father's, observing me intently. I believed I heard my father departing in the late hours. With a deep breath, I started to share everything with her. Indeed, not all things. She didn't require every grim detail. Just enough to understand, just enough to grasp the impending transformation of her world. I observed her expression shift from bewilderment to astonishment to fury. "Is that Aunt Brooklyn?" she murmured, her voice trembling. However, she was present last weekend, assisting me with my college applications. She embraced you as you parted ways. How was she able to do that?" I extended my hand across the table, but she recoiled, rising so suddenly that her chair screeched against the floor. I am unable to." She dashed from the kitchen, and moments later, I heard the sharp sound of her bedroom door slamming shut. Once more, my phone vibrated, yet another note from Brooklyn. I had received 12 since last night, each one increasingly urgent than the previous. I removed them all without taking the time to read any of them. Then I took a step I should have taken long ago. I accessed the company's financial systems and initiated a comprehensive audit. After 3 hours, Hazel returned to the downstairs area. Her eyes glistened with a hint of red, yet the resolve in her posture echoed my own spirit from years past. She took a seat opposite me at my home office desk. I sent texts to both of them. she announced. I expressed my desire to never communicate with them again. Hazel, dear, he remains your father. No, she interrupted me. A father should never treat his family this way. And Brooklyn, she was meant to be your closest companion. Our companion. She gazed at the display of my laptop. What are you up to? After a moment of doubt, I concluded that she had reached an age where comprehension was within her grasp. I am safeguarding what lies ahead. Your father might have represented Mitchell Properties, but I've consistently been the one steering the actual operations. I must ensure that everything is secure before. The phone buzzed to life, revealing Donald's number on the screen. I declined the call, but seconds later, an email popped up. Oh, come on, Kat. This is just absurd. I attempted to log into the company systems, but my access has been denied. This immature conduct must come to an end. I will be meeting with the investors from Shanghai on Monday. How can I possibly operate without access to the files? Donald. Hazel glanced at the email I was reading and erupted into a laugh that was tinged with a sorrowful edge. He certainly is quite remarkable. Wouldn't you agree? Indeed, he is. I crafted a brief reply. Donald, I will take care of the Shanghai investors. Your belongings will arrive at the Brooklyn apartment by 5 p.m. today. Please refrain from entering any buildings owned by Mitchell Properties. Security has been alerted. Catherine Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer, Mitchell Properties. Chief Executive Officer, Hazel inquired, arching an eyebrow. It's time I emerged from the shadows. I responded, pressing send. I established this company to the same extent as. No, much more than that. Your father was the one who did. It's time for all to be aware of that. The remainder of the weekend flew by in a whirlwind of events. I arranged for security to change all the locks, both at my residence and my workplace. I consulted with our legal team, and they validated what I was already aware of. The prenuptial agreement was unassailable, leaving Donald with no entitlement to the company's assets. I coordinated with a moving company to gather his personal items, and I made preparations for Monday. However, Sunday evening introduced an unforeseen guest. As I was in the kitchen crafting dinner alongside Hazel, the doorbell chimed unexpectedly. I caught a glimpse of Brooklyn on our doorstep through the security camera. Dark streaks of mascara marred her cheeks. Don't answer it, Hazel said immediately, her knuckles white as she gripped the kitchen counter. I must, I responded gently. We need to listen to her perspective. Mother, please, no. Believe me, darling. At times, confronting challenges directly is essential. I approached the door, my bare feet gliding quietly over the hardwood floors. Through the glass, I observed Brooklyn fidgeting, her designer handbag being rearranged in her hands. The one I had assisted Donald in selecting for her birthday the previous year. I recognized with a sense of bitterness lingering in my mouth. I opened the door, yet I chose not to invite her inside. She appeared quite unwell. There's nothing quite like the poised, self-assured woman who has been my closest companion for 2 decades. Kat, please, she began. It's essential to grasp this concept. In truth, there's no need for me to grasp anything at all. I interjected, maintaining a steady tone. I must prioritize the safety of my daughter and the well-being of my business. What is the name of your company? She laughed, her voice tinged with a touch of hysteria. Feline. Let's be sensible. Donald transformed Mitchell Properties into its current stature. It's not as simple as that. I believe it would be best for you to go. Hazel's voice emerged from behind me, sharp and distinct. I was unaware of her coming near. Brooklyn's expression twisted in distress. Hazel, darling, I kindly ask you not to refer to me in that way. Never again. Hazel moved closer, aligning herself beside me. Do you realize what the most frustrating aspect is? Last week, as you assisted me with my personal essay for Columbia, you gazed into my eyes and spoke about integrity and the importance of following one's heart. Was that before or after you spent the night with my dad that day? Brooklyn recoiled as though she had received a sharp blow. It isn't. It's intricate. In fact, I mentioned, it's quite straightforward. Your decisions alongside Donald have been made. Now you must face the repercussions of your actions. I began to shut the door, but then hesitated. Oh, and Brooklyn, the next time you encounter Donald, please remind him that the board meeting has been rescheduled to Tuesday morning. I'm confident he'll want to be there. especially since the key topic is the selection of a new public relations director. Upon shutting the door, her gasp of realization reached my ears. Donald had consistently managed our public relations himself. It was the way he upheld his persona as the representative of the organization. That was about to change. Hazel faced me, a hint of her familiar smile dancing at the corners of her mouth. "You're pretty amazing, Mom." I enveloped her in an embrace, inhaling the comforting aroma of her shampoo. "Watch your language, young lady." "Apologies, but not really." She embraced me more closely. "What actions will you take regarding the board meeting?" I smiled, recalling the files I had unearthed during my weekend audit. "I have a couple of surprises up my sleeve. You're not the only one with skills in this arena." Later that night, as I got ready for bed, my phone vibrated with a message from an unfamiliar number. It was a photo. Donald and Brooklyn shared a cozy dinner, seemingly enjoying the ambience of an upscale restaurant. The message below stated, "Thought you should see this. They are currently at Carlisle's. Strategizing something. Exercise caution. A companion." I captured the image, incorporated it into my expanding collection of proof, and programmed my alarm for 5 a.m. tomorrow. Promises to stretch on. And I must prepare myself accordingly. The true struggle was only starting, and I had a decade and a half of darkness to emerge from. As I surrendered to slumber, my mind lingered on Hazel's words. Maybe she was right. Perhaps I was quite the force to be reckoned with. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's precisely who I was meant to become. The boardroom of Mitchell Properties was a source of immense pride for my father. A meticulously crafted mahogany table, elegant leather chairs, and expansive windows that frame a breathtaking view of the city skyline. I spent endless hours in this place as a child, working on my homework while my father held his meetings. Now, at 8:45 a.m. on Tuesday morning, I sat in his old chair, reviewing my notes one final time. Penelope, my trusted executive assistant for the past decade, walked in with my customary morning coffee. "Security has been notified. Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Walker have just made their entrance into the lobby." She paused, then added, "Together." I sipped my coffee, allowing its warmth to ground me. Punctuality at its finest. "What is the count of board members who have arrived?" "All 7 are present, gathered in the conference room down the hall. Mr. Jones from Shanghai is currently engaged in a video call." She paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "Kat, do you really think this is the right choice?" I gazed at Penelope, recalling the countless late nights we had spent collaborating, the numerous occasions she had stepped in for Donald during crucial meetings. "Have you heard?" I inquired softly. She locked her gaze with mine. I had my suspicions, yet it felt like I had no right to intervene. "It's all right," I reassured her, "but I need to know. Are you on board with this?" "Forever has been, forever will be." She adjusted her blazer with a precise motion. "Should I go ahead and submit them?" I nodded, rising to adjust my charcoal gray suit with care. Not one of the designer pieces Donald had bought me, but a new one I'd purchased yesterday. A fresh suit, a stylish haircut, a new beginning. The board members entered first, predominantly older gentlemen familiar with my father, accompanied by 2 women who had joined not long ago. Then arrived Donald in Brooklyn, clad in his typical power suit, while she wore a conservative black dress that conveyed a message of professionalism and reliability. I couldn't help but notice the irony. "Catherine," Donald remarked with a calm demeanor, as he made his way to his customary position at the head of the table. "It seems there may have been a miscommunication. Please take a seat, Mr. Mitchell," I interrupted, choosing to remain standing. "Absent. The chair beside you will suffice." His face flushed, yet with the board observing, he acquiesced. Brooklyn lingered hesitantly by the door. "Ms. Walker, you may wait outside," I stated, my tone amiable yet resolute. "In fact," Donald interrupted, "as our PR director, Brooklyn should. Ms. Walker is not and has never been an official employee of Mitchell Properties," I asserted, pressing a button on my laptop. The expansive screen behind me flickered to life, showcasing a collection of documents. "Consulting fees have been funneled through a shell company linked to your personal account." Donald, an account, I should note, that has been financed through unauthorized transfers from the company's operational budget. The atmosphere fell into a profound silence. On the video screen, Mr. Jones leaned in with intent. His interest clearly intensified. "These are unfounded claims," Donald stammered, yet I could perceive the fear in his gaze. "Brooklyn," I urged once more, "please wait outside." This time, she nearly dashed out of the room. The subsequent event was the most significant presentation I had ever experienced. For 2 hours, I carefully organized all the insights I had gathered during my weekend audit. The embezzled funds, the ghostly consultancy charges, the exaggerated expense claims. However, what truly mattered was that I revealed the work I had been doing in the background for 15 years, the real estate transactions I had orchestrated, the investments I had overseen, and the connections I had cultivated while Donald received the accolades. Ultimately, I determined that Mitchell Properties requires a transformation. It is essential to prioritize openness, responsibility, and guidance that centers on the company's best interests. I am ready to present Mr. Mitchell with a substantial severance package, contingent upon his signing of a non-compete agreement and his immediate resignation. "This is absurd," Donald shouted, rising to his feet. "This company was built by me." "In fact," a soft voice interjected, "you did not. It was George Harrison, the senior board member and my father's closest companion." He turned to the others. "I've known Catherine since she was just a child, observing her as she developed her skills in this business from the very beginning. Today, she would make her father proud." He cast his gaze upon Donald. "You, my boy, were merely a passenger on this journey." The decision was reached with complete agreement. By noon, Donald was led out of the building, his company email having been deactivated already. I observed from my office window as he and Brooklyn entered his Mercedes, a vehicle that technically belonged to the company, and drove off into the distance. Yet, the day had more in store. At 2 in the afternoon, I attended yet another meeting, this time with Hazel's college counselor. Because life continues on despite corporate drama, and my daughter's future holds equal weight to any business deal. "You didn't have to come," Hazel remarked as we entered the school. "I understand that your day has been quite hectic. Is this a joke? This is precisely the place I ought to be." I grasped her hand tightly. "I believe we are both entitled to some positive news today." Mrs. Rodriguez, the counselor, had been acquainted with our family for many years. Her expression revealed nothing to suggest she was aware of the morning's happenings. Yet in a town of this scale, I was certain she had. "Hazel's applications are very strong," she began, shuffling through some papers. "Her grades shine brightly, her extracurricular activities stand out, and her personal essay," she halted, a smile gracing her lips. "It stands out as one of the most impactful works I've encountered in a long time." "Is that so?" Hazel straightened her posture, despite the last-minute change. I looked at her in astonishment. This was the first time I encountered this information. "Indeed," Mrs. Rodriguez went on, "your initial essay on pursuing your family's business legacy was commendable. But this latest piece," she grasped a sheet of paper. "May I read a section? If that's all right with you?" Hazel nodded, and I absorbed the words as Mrs. Rodriguez read aloud. "Success is not defined by upholding a facade or conforming to the expectations of others. It's about embracing your authenticity, even when that authenticity brings discomfort. I learned this from watching my mother, who taught me that real strength isn't about having power, but about how you use it. Often, the most challenging conflicts we encounter are not with others, but with the narratives we've created about our own identities and expectations." Tears began to gather in my eyes. Hazel extended her hand and grasped mine. Later that evening, as we sat in our kitchen enjoying takeout Chinese food, a treat Donald had always disapproved of, my phone buzzed with a message from Penelope. "This is something you must witness." A link to a local business news website was included. The announcement declared, "Mitchell Properties reveals shift in leadership. Catherine Mitchell assumes leadership." Here is a quote from George Harrison. "Catherine Mitchell has been the driving force behind this company's success for years. It's time everyone knew that." Hazel read the article over my shoulder, then hugged me tight. "Mother, what's that? I'm proud of us." I embraced her in return, contemplating the obstacles that lay before us. Donald refused to fade away silently. I knew him too well to believe that. And there would be murmurs, speculations, and scrutiny to confront. Yet, in this very moment, I sensed a strength within me that I hadn't experienced in years. Once more, my phone vibrated. Yet another unfamiliar number. Your father would surely take great pride in this. And so am I. Shall we grab a coffee soon? Kelly Jones. I gazed at the message, utterly stunned. Kelly Jones. Mrs. Jones, a prominent figure among Asia's leading businesswomen. Though our encounter was brief and occurred years back, her kindness and quiet strength lingered in my memory. Is there any good news? Hazel asked, noticing my expression. I believe so, I responded, storing the number away. This could very well be the start of something intriguing. As I settled into bed that night, a realization dawned on me. After a long time, I found myself free from the burden of keeping up appearances or conforming to the expectations of others. Instead, I felt a thrill for tomorrow, for all the tomorrows that lay ahead, because finally, I was writing my own story. They say success is the best revenge, but nobody tells you how exhausting it can be. 2 weeks following the board meeting, I found myself overwhelmed with meetings, phone calls, and urgent decisions demanding my focus. The company had not collapsed in Donald's absence. Exactly the contrary. Now that I was in a position of public responsibility, it seemed that everyone was eager to claim a portion of my attention. As I sat in my office, poring over contracts, Penelope burst in, her typically composed demeanor visibly rattled. Kat, you have to check this out. She passed me her tablet, displaying a business news website. The headline left a bitter taste in my stomach. A former executive from Mitchell Properties embarks on a new venture alongside Chinese investors. The piece elaborated on how Donald had allegedly obtained support from a competing development group in Shanghai, the very same team we had been in discussions with for several months. A photograph captured him and Brooklyn at a corporate event, both exuding confidence as they smiled at the camera. He's leveraging our connections, Penelope remarked, pointing out the evident. He's leveraging Brooklyn's network from her PR experience to reach them. I placed the tablet aside, my thoughts already in a whirlwind. Please connect me with Kelly Jones on the phone. It is 3 a.m. within the vibrant city of Shanghai. She will definitely want to take this call. As Penelope wove her enchantment with the international line, I settled in with my laptop and started composing an email to our legal team. Donald signed a non-compete agreement included in his severance package. My phone buzzed, suggesting he might be attempting to lure away our Chinese investors. A message from Hazel. Mom, there are whispers at school. There are things about Dad available on the internet. I responded promptly. Skip the articles. I'll be there to collect you after school. Adore you. Penelope announced that Mrs. Jones is on line 1. With a steadying inhale, I reached for the phone. Kelly, I apologize for the early hour. Catherine spoke with a warmth that cut through the late hour. I was curious when you'd reach out. I take it you've caught wind of the latest news? Yes, Kelly, I must find out. Is Donald truly collaborating with the Liu Group? A moment of silence lingered, followed by a gentle laugh. My dear, did you genuinely believe that Mr. Wood Jones and I really engage in business with someone who turns against his own family? The Liu Group is not supporting Donald. Support is on your side. I leaned back in my chair, taken aback. I find myself perplexed. Regarding the contract you sent last week, it was remarkable, transparent, just, and progressive. Donald would never have been able to create something like that. For years, it has been clear who the true talent at Mitchell Properties really is. Yet another pause. The news piece is, what is the phrase for smoke and mirrors? Donald reached out to multiple investors. Indeed, yet, he remains unacknowledged by those around him. A wave of relief washed over me, soon accompanied by a surge of curiosity. So, what was the reason for permitting the article's publication? At times, Catherine, it's essential to allow your adversaries to think they hold the advantage. It makes their eventual failure more informative. Once I wrapped up the call with Kelly, I found myself in my office, reflecting on the vast amount of knowledge I still needed to acquire about this game. Donald had consistently managed the public aspects, the connections, the political landscape. I had assumed it was due to his superior skill. Now I pondered whether he had intentionally kept me in the shadows to secure his own standing. The remainder of the afternoon unfolded in a haze of discussions and choices. As I arrived at Hazel's school, a throbbing ache consumed my head. She slipped into the car with a hush. Her expression was one of concern. Rough day? I inquired, drawing back from the edge of the street. At lunch, I found myself cornered by Madison. Brooklyn's niece said some pretty nasty things about you. Who we are. My grip on the steering wheel grew firmer. What sort of things? That you hold a grudge. You've always felt a twinge of envy towards Brooklyn for her youth and beauty. That father was only in it for the financial gain. She glanced in my direction. Is that really the case? Concerning the finances, I eased into a parking space close to our beloved ice cream parlor. The one Donald consistently claimed was too lowbrow for our family's reputation. Let's discuss this in a thoughtful manner. Amidst colossal sundaes, yet another matter that would have drawn Donald's disapproval. I shared the truth with Hazel, reflecting on the moment I encountered her father during the company's challenging times. How he had appeared to be so flawless, perfectly in sync with my vision. How I had succumbed to his allure and drive, convinced that we were creating something collaboratively. However, let me clarify the relationship between wealth and influence. I elaborated, swirling my softening ice cream. They fail to bring you joy. They simply facilitate the act of feigning authenticity. Is that the reason you never mentioned being the one truly in charge? Somewhat. I weighed my words with great thought. I convinced myself it was in the company's best interest for your father to be the public representative. He excelled at it, and I persuaded myself that I found fulfillment in operating from the shadows. But really, I think I was afraid. And you? Fearful? Hazel appeared unconvinced. Mom, I just saw you dismantle Dad's entire career with a PowerPoint presentation. I couldn't help but chuckle. Fear does not negate the presence of strength. At times, the most courageous act is to acknowledge that you've been concealing your true self. Hazel sat in silence for a moment, swirling her ice cream around the bowl. Today, I stumbled upon Brooklyn's old yearbook online. This came as a surprise. Oh, she participated in the debate team alongside her father during their college years. They were in a relationship prior to his encounter with you. The spoon slipped from my grasp, clattering to the ground. Excuse me. Hazel retrieved her phone and displayed a scanned page from the yearbook. There they stood, Donald and Brooklyn, youthful and beaming, alongside the debate team. How could I have been unaware of this? Hazel went on to elaborate. I conducted some research. Do you recall 3 years back, when Brooklyn's PR firm unexpectedly landed a slew of major clients? I acknowledged, starting to grasp the direction of this unfolding narrative. Those clients were all businesses that my father had connections with. He was directing opportunities towards her, establishing her business. Hazel's voice dripped with bitterness. It was more than just an affair. This was all part of their plan. Utilizing your funds, your relationships, our funds. I offered a gentle correction. And Hazel, I appreciate you sharing that with me. However, I kindly ask that you cease the investigation. This isn't a weight you need to bear. However, I truly mean it. Concentrate on your studies, your applications, and your friendships. Allow me to take care of everything from here. Later that night, after Hazel had retired for the evening, I found myself in my study, a glass of wine in hand, gazing at the old photograph. Donald and Brooklyn, a quarter of a century ago. A future full of possibilities awaits them. Was this part of their scheme all along? Was I merely a useful pawn in their elaborate scheme? A vibration from my phone interrupted the silence. Another piece from an anonymous source.